Morning, Mars.
Morning, Shawn.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
It's been a while.
It's been a while. So, by introduction, you are a former client of mine, and you had a 13-day trial before the Honorable Justice Nelson in 2016 for decision making, which it is now, access, now it's parenting time, equalization, and all other ancillary uh, requests for relief. And you were successful.
I was, thank you. Again.
And now here we are 7 years later, and the toll of the litigation has reared its ugly head over these past few years. Am I right?
Very much so, yeah, very much so.
So you have two beautiful children, plus you have three children. I should really say, because you have stepchildren that are really your children too.
Yes,
So you have in total
6 kids.
6 children, although 4 of them are adults.
Yeah.
So how are your children doing? Like your 2 children, the younger ones.
Marissa's in university now, and Matt's looking to, get into my business.
What's your
Um,
business?
Industrial mill writing. So,
Have you been doing that all your life?
yeah, pretty much. Almost 30 years now, so it's been a while.
Do you
So,
like it?
I love it. It's new thing every day. It's always challenging and never the same thing twice. So I think that's why Matthew likes it too.
How's Matthew doing in terms of the fallout of the divorce?
He went through a rough spell last year. Typical teenage stuff. Got into the wrong crowd, doing the wrong thing. But he persevered and he came through it. And it's been a year for him, and he's doing quite well now. Yeah.
And Marissa?
Marissa struggled a bit more. She was always that happy-go-lucky child that always had a smile on her face, and she was a little harder to read. And originally wanted to be a vet, and then kind of last minute she changed her way to want to take child psychology. And I've recently come to learn that she chose the psychology end of it to try and better understand her life and why everything happened the way it did.
So I want to go back now to the beginning. So you and your ex-wife, we'll call her A, separated in 2005.
Yep.
And the children at that point, she was pregnant with Matt, and Marissa was how old?
A year and a half.
Okay. So you left the house,
Yeah, I did.
and it was a purchased matrimonial home, right?
She had it before me. She bought it just as I started dating her, and I had a house in Oshawa at the time.
Okay. So when you left, why did you leave?
I couldn't handle the verbal abuse anymore. It was,
What do you mean? Like, what kind of verbal abuse?
she called me basically a fucking asshole every day, multiple times, and it got to the point where I was starting to realize that it was, taking me down. And it was actually an email from my dad that said, "Son, we need to talk," that kind of really made me look at what happens in a day. And after that, I said to her, I said, this is something that bothers me. We did some counseling to try and get through it, and it was always my fault. And I just said to her, I said, this is kind of a trigger point, please stop. And she used it more. And then it just got to the point where I said, I think it's just better I leave.
So you left, and just so that we understand, you don't have a criminal record,
No.
you never were charged.
No.
CAS wasn't involved
Not
at that point.
No, not until I left. Yeah.
Right, so just a breakdown of relationship with one child and one on the way, and
Yep.
just just not working out.
Yep. Family pressure and the typical money struggle and difference of opinion on how to raise children.
Okay, so you leave,
Yeah.
and presumably what happens after that is you two work out a parenting schedule for Marissa, right?
Well, we isn't the correct term. She figured out a parenting schedule. Basically was I could only see the kids with her at her house at her time, and there was real no notice. It was just whenever she felt like it. And it was very hard. Like we had our issues, and then now she wants me back in her house to see the kids, and it was just a constant battle.
Okay, but
And
Marissa was young
Mhm.
and she was pregnant, and I'm sure it was very emotional for her. Why couldn't you have just agreed to see the children for the first year at least, or to see Marissa for a year in her home?
We tried, but every
So you
time
agreed.
I verbally agreed.
Why?
My line of thought was basically, if I keep the peace, there's a lot of emotion at the beginning of a breakup, and things are said that maybe aren't really meant to come out as they are. I think I really thought that the problem would just kind of dissipate, and we'd be able to you know, be able to co-parent.
But they're your children too, so why should you have to settle for just seeing them, obviously when Matt is born, in her residence?
I think when I was separating, I think part of the issue, I was ready to just not fight anymore. Meaning, if she said jump, I'd say how high, basically, because I didn't want to rock the boat.
Understood.
I figured that would have been the better way.
So how long after, and just for the record, I wasn't your lawyer at the
No.
time. It wasn't until just before the trial that I was
Yeah.
hired. Okay, so how long did you see Marissa? When was Matt born?
December 12th, 05.
So how long after you separated was he born?
Basically a month and a bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So how long did you see them at her residence?
I had a couple visits after Matthew was born. Obviously I couldn't do much with Matt because he was a newborn. But shortly after that,
Was she breastfeeding?
yep.
Okay. Did that bother you that she was breastfeeding as perhaps an attempt to keep you away from Matt?
No,
Why not?
it's natural. That stuff, it never ever crossed my mind. Like, a mother feeds their kid, and some mothers choose longer, and I'm not a mom. I guess I kind of figured mother instinct is a little bit different than a male instinct. Where right down to discipline to everything, right? So I didn't put too much weight on it, to be honest with you.
Okay. So what you're saying is presumably that the mother is a better parent because she has those instincts?
No, I never said that.
Okay.
What I mean is,
No, you said it right. I just wanted to call you on it. So, okay, so at some point, obviously, having parenting time is outside of the residence.
No, I never got that.
Eventually, obviously, you did.
Not before the children's aid got involved. There was a couple verbal incidences, that escalated, and the police were called. Police called, automatic call to the children's aid. That's the way it goes. And the children's aid gets involved. You're adding a level of stress that is, it's pretty primed. They get into you, every little nook and cranny, into your life and into your relationship and to the kids, and it's difficult. You're already in an emotional state, and now you've got somebody you don't know poking and prodding, saying, well, how do you hold the child? What do you do? Why are we here? Like, well, how did this all happen? And it adds to another level of stress. And the CS has to do their due diligence. I understand, and they did, but it doesn't happen instantly. The next day they say, okay, you can see your kids again. It could take 2 months for them to put a plan together and execute it and come do home visits and talk with you and do all their
Are
stuff.
you criticizing CAS? Do you
No.
think they're not a good organization?
No, I think the CS has to do that to get a good result. The problem is now you have 2 more months of high tension conflict.
Right.
You're already on edge because you're separating. You got emotional, damage from your failure in your relationship. You're not getting to see your children, and now you have another third party doing their due diligence, but it takes time, and you're watching your kids grow up, and until then, there's going to be limited access to your own kids.
CAS gets involved. How long after separation do you end up having parenting time outside the residence?
Parenting time outside the residence didn't happen until well into the late June 07. So almost,
Year and a half?
a little over a year and a half.
And were you in court at that point?
Our official court filing was June 2007, because we're 07 Yeah,
Right.
'07. So,
Why weren't you able to take the children out of A's house for a year and a half?
well, she said no.
Okay, so why didn't you go to court 6 months before or a year, or 6 months after?
Two things. One, money. Two, um, still thinking that, the dust is gonna settle and we can co-parent together. I mean, I remained hopeful for a long time that some of the problems would just go away and we'd be able to do the right thing for the kids and co-parent, even if there was a little bit of disagreement, that happens between people that, co-parent well. It's no different. And money. I mean, I was trying to give what I could. I'm now living in a separate residence.
You were living out of your truck for a part of it, right?
Yep, that was in '07. I had we had two houses. We sold one. I sold one because it was in my name. I moved further north to buy something cheaper to try and reduce my debt load because I was paying for the debt at the house and some other stuff. But with what I had to pay, I couldn't afford to go home, so I would basically sleep in the truck and shower at work and whatnot because I, I didn't take anything from the house. There was no money to take. You know, the one lawyer I did speak to, they said, don't be liquidating your assets, don't be doing it because she can come back on you.
Right.
So I was kind of leaving status quo, but 000. There was just no money, and I couldn't even afford to really drive home with what I had for commitments.
Okay, so now the court proceedings have commenced, and at some point, you do get to take Marissa and Matt out to have parenting time.
Supervised with my mom.
When did that happen?
That was July of '07, and Elaine agreed that my mom could be the supervisor, so she would drive in from Sundridge, which is in between North Bay and Huntsville, 200 and some kilometers, to come down for the day, basically to sit with us for my 8-hour visit is all I was given.
When you say given, by court order?
Yeah.
And how did that happen?
First, I believe that we were in court 3 or 4 times. The general back and forth, lawyers doing their thing, throwing a little bit of mud to see where it's going to stick. And then we finally found a judge that kind of said, well, listen, it's been a couple years now. He needs to start this process. So there was a progressive plan. It was...
But why not just 50-50? Why wasn't that implemented when you went to court?
I think back then 50-50 wasn't as much of a thing it is now.
Or shared parenting.
Shared parent, either or. It wasn't as talked about, from what I know from other people that have divorced, the 50-50 thing is a lot more prominent now. So, we did our weekends, they were scheduled, staggered out, and then it was to progress to an overnight visit with no supervision. And the day before we were supposed to have the first overnight, or the visit before the first overnight visit, that's when the accusation came in.
So I understand that you and your mother made sure that the car seats were perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Your mother was a nurse.
My sister-in-law was a nurse, and she
Sorry.
runs the car clinics, or the car seat clinics up north.
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
So you knew for sure that there could be no complaints.
Yeah.
So you pick up the children, and what happens?
She wants to check the car seats in the car. My mom actually had the car seat insertion form to show that she did the program and the car seat was installed correctly by, a public health nurse.
So she goes out to the car, the kids are on their way out to the car,
Yeah.
and an argument ensues.
With my mother. Yeah. And, my mom basically said they're in right. You're not making any adjustments because they're in right. And they've been done by a professional. And A got very upset and then proceeded to call the police. And now once again, we have all the third party stuff. We have the CAS, we have the police, we have...
Do you get to take the kids that night?
Nope.
That day?
Nope.
Why?
Basically the police say, it's...
Keep the peace and just...
Yeah, and the police, they're in a tough position because, their job is to keep the peace unless... And in those days, I'm not sure how it is now, but unless it's specifically written that the police can enforce that part of the order, they just said, keep the peace, you go away, you guys figure it out in court.
It's actually the same now.
Okay.
And there's been some criticism about including that there's been some criticism and pushback from the courts in terms of inserting that clause, because the police really don't want to be in that position to be the enforcers. And of course, more orders that allow the police to sort of step in and remove the children and give the children to the visiting parent, the more acrimony there will be, the more conflict there will be. The police force cannot handle sort of that constant, those constant calls by people, because people just call the police at will now. They don't care. So, okay, so you walk away, you don't get to see the children, your mother's driven that far, you're unhappy, and then what happens?
We end up back in court, and Elena A was successful in basically convincing the court to have drop off at the police station.
I see. And so that happened?
It was lobby pickup, yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to fast forward, because in 2010, the Honorable Justice McGee ordered that the children be removed from A and placed into your care. And in fact, you were on your way back from your honeymoon.
Yeah.
And it's not as if you had even instigated this.
No.
But obviously there were a number of concerning issues. The OCL became involved, CAS was involved. There was significant litigation surrounding the parenting time and where the children should live. And why did Justice McGee do that, to your recollection?
Marissa had some medical issues with her bowels, and
which occurs with children.
Yeah.
Involved in conflict. That's one of the
it's
side
behavioral.
effects.
And our family doctor was very correct in saying that a lot of this is behavioral. The problem is that the issues were becoming very severe, and the doctor was saying she needs to be on this medication right away, because it will have a lasting effect if you don't look after this issue now. And A was not willing to give her the medication, because we had taken her to the doctor, because the one weekend that we had her, she was having issues, we were worried, we did the appropriate thing.
Which then turned against you. That
it never got turned against us as such. It was more so that A was upset that we were questioning her parenting, because they were still with her at the time.
Right.
And then
and you basically had no say in anything. And
no.
And I think, you forgot to mention that the first time you actually did get to have parenting time with the children, she accused you of sexual assault against Marissa.
And the one
And how old was Marissa at the time?
She would have been 3 or 4. The one thing that she did not know was my current wife, we had started dating, she was actually with me the entire visit, and I never told anybody. So when the CAS did their investigation, they had a clear witness to go to and talk to.
Right, so you told CAS that she had been present.
Mm-hmm.
Right, but initially, before CAS got involved, you didn't see the necessity of saying, by the way, I had a witness, because the allegations were preposterous, right?
It was unfathomable,
And this is after, I'm sure, A had done her own research, and had seen that the police weren't going to assist her in her quest to remove you from the children's lives, right?
It was basically a jump around to see who's going to take her story, where it's going to stick, where can she get the most momentum, and whether it was lawyer jumping, whether it was a worker jumping in the CAS. There was lots of issues where she would push a worker to their breaking point, and then assign a new one, then you start the process over.
Then there's delays.
And then the same with the lawyers. So you let your lawyer go, you retain a new one. Well, then that new lawyer is going to have a different perspective. It's going to look at this part of the document.
And needs time to review the file, and
now you
therefore
have a
can't
delay.
Talk about A keeps undermining you all through the litigation. She goes out of her way to make you feel uncomfortable. She videotapes you.
She records me.
She record and the children.
And the children.
And acts as if you're
leads
Attila
them.
the Hun, and that she can't be around you when you never did anything. You weren't aggressive with her.
No.
Right, because remember, I went through the trial, so I read all the materials.
Yep.
You were never aggressive.
No.
You were never insulting.
No.
You were firm but polite. You had decided from the get-go, and I think that's your personality. Although I think you've changed a bit, because of this trial, to just look like to just take the high road, and to just do the path of least resistance. Right.
Correct.
So that's what happens. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So all this is going on while we're trying to resolve the matter. She's had 13 lawyers. Every new lawyer starts with the same mantra. Plus, you won't provide her financials. You can't even get that resolved.
No.
And the children are being videotaped, audio taped, and she actually wants to include that in the trial.
Yeah.
Because in some form or way, she thinks that's going to assist her.
Yeah.
Okay. I understand that Marissa was taken to Sick Kids for an investigation as a result of the false allegations.
So not only Sick Kids, there was Sick Kids, there was the police stations, there was her underwear ad, the child crime lab in Oshawa. It was one of these things. It was just whoever will let it stick. And I guess I kind of got used to it. It became the new norm that I'm the predator that's not a predator, according to her. So I kind of got used to dealing with the professionals. So whether it was the police, whether it was CAS, whether it was, the mud throwing in with the lawyers, which I never really understood, because if something was...
$600,000 later that she spent with lawyers, right?
Yeah.
For which she claimed she didn't have money. But I think, I have a close friend who was also a client, and the allegations were made against him, and that young child also had to go to Sick Kids. And I think he, like you, can't get over the fact that their daughters, like your and his daughter, had to be investigated like that.
What they do down there, they're the best.
Yep.
100%. But if anybody did any research on what they have to do to be the best, it's invasive. They have their techniques, but it's not the actual test or that actual moment when they're actually sitting in Sick Kids. It's years later. That's relatively, they do a great job. But when a child gets older and they start trying to run their life through their brains to try and understand, did mom have more weight on this, or dad, or who's at fault? Did I cause the problem? Because a lot of these kids do feel like they're the problem.
Yes,
right?
It's their fault.
It's their fault, and they start running these scenarios through their heads. So they're, now my kids are trying to run through and make sense of stuff. And before the trial in 16, I was out in the garage, and it's clear as day. And I tell a lot of friends this story, and I still get upset about it. My daughter came out and she said, "Daddy, can I talk?" I said, "Yeah. What's up, sweetie?" She says,
and that's actually how you talk to her.
It is.
Yeah.
And
Kind, sweet.
I said, "What's
loving.
up?" And she says, "Dad, I have a white teddy bear from Sick Kids at my mom's house. Do you know why I have it?" And Marcy, I'll tell you, it is probably the hardest thing I've had to answer. I'm not telling you why you have that teddy bear.
And what did you say to her?
I said, "Sweetie, I can't answer it." And at that time...
You weren't lying to her, you just said, "I can't answer that now."
At that time, Marissa was getting some counseling because, some mental health issues had started arising. We had COVID happening, this is after, but
But
there's...
not just that, because she was older, she was the older one, she had to protect Matt.
She was told to be Matthew's mother because my wife was not her mother. And I will tell you, there's another thing.
Your ex-wife?
No, my ex-wife demanded that Marissa was a mother to Matthew, not my wife.
Got it.
And it's a horrible thing to put on a young child. She said, "Oh, look after your brother, protect your brother." From what? What's there to protect this kid from? He's in a very safe home. It's been proven by all the authorities. OCL was involved, 2 different OCLs. You know, we had Mr. Cotis out of Toronto, a good OCL.
Cotis from
Stephen,
Epstein Cole, yeah.
Yeah. We had Linda Blow, very well respected in Durham region.
Very well respected.
Very well respected.
Retired, but now with her own practice.
Yep. It's you know, these weren't people that just kind of graduated college and they're trying to figure out a family. Like, these people have years of experience and training and insight and
but to they had no experience.
They were stupid. And
she even included in her exhibit book her high school grades. And at that point she would have been late 30s, early 40s. Like high school grades.
Yeah.
To show how smart she was and how well behaved she was in school. And she thought that was relevant for the 13-day trial, for which she claimed she had no money to pay costs,
Yeah.
for which she then appealed. Getting back then, so the teddy bear, okay? Fast forward.
Yeah.
Marissa always had to look after Matt.
Yeah.
And Matt and Marissa had a really close relationship, but I think that was too much for Marissa. Plus a blended family.
Blended families are hard, and I'll tell you, anybody that's been involved in blended family, it's easy being the parent. It's very hard being the step parent. I've been on both sides.
I was a step parent.
I was a step parent to Caroline's kids, and you know, we had what was everybody said was the model blended family. You know, we had 6 kids, everybody meshed good, everybody following rules. You know, boys tend to go a little more south, we'll say. You know, we had a few little issues with her son, but you know, he's turned into a great kid now, and vice versa. You know, but being the step parent's a lot harder than being the parent, for sure.
And you get along with your wife's ex-partner, right? You get along with all of them.
Yeah.
So you don't really have problems.
We've gone to his mom's house on Christmas Eve with him and his new partner.
Good food?
Oh, excellent. She's a great cook.
Okay, I love that.
Yeah.
Getting back then, so what happens is that, well, one, I think it was too much pressure on Marissa. 2, I think her relationship with A became toxic.
Mm-hmm.
And she was very manipulative to her, and we witnessed it, and she exposed her and would criticize you relentlessly, and you rarely did, because first of all, it wasn't your nature to do so, and B, to what end, and you didn't want to poke the bear. So I guess Marissa does well in school, top marks, she's a dancer, and goes to university, right, on her own.
Yeah.
And everything seems to be good, and she's going to university away from you, so she's, you know, on campus, and, you know, she's thriving, right?
So I think.
So you think. And then in September you get a call that she tried to hang herself from a tree. She actually did jump.
So this is probably going to be the sensitive stuff that I don't know how we're going to get through. First year, Marissa was struggling a little bit, and you know, she wasn't feeling like she was in a good place. We got her some help. We thought things were okay. Marissa's the smiler, you know, everything. It's hard to read her, you know. We try and reach out to her. This year, before school started, is when things took a shit, and she did try and end her life, and you know, she was in ICU for 7 days
on life support. I understand that you and A were able to be in the same room, and that you both did hold Marissa's hands as a team, so to speak, for that moment.
You know, she blamed me walking up to Marissa's room when I got her at the front entrance of the hospital, and when we're standing there, she just said, "This is your fault. You know, this is because of you.
Could you imagine?
You took the kids away from me."
Even now, she says that you took the kids away from me.
18 years. It's been 18 years, and she's still angry. You know, and we're up there with Marissa, and I said to Elena, Elena, for fuck's sakes, Elena, for the first time in this girl's life, why can't we stand here and hold her hand together to show her we're her parents. In all this time, we've never done that. Look at her. This is from us.
And what happened?
She held her hand and I held the other hand. And for about 15 minutes, neither one of us said a word. I never looked at her.
Was Marissa awake at that time
No.
or still?
No.
She was on life, right?
Life support, yep. Yep. By far, I have gone through the trial. I have gone through the allegations. I've gone through the separation. I've gone through police knocking on my door. I've gone through all of this stuff. You know, being boxed in on the highway because she called and said that I was drinking and driving, and I
When
wasn't.
you weren't?
And I wasn't. I have done all of this stuff, gone through it, and I can tell you, looking at my daughter made everything else look like a party at Chuck E. Cheese's. I'm telling you, it was the hardest reality check a father or a parent could ever have over what the effects of a bad separation can do to these kids. And, you know, 18 years, 4,524 days we were in court. It damn near killed my daughter. And
Well, why would you say they're equated?
the system is broken in many ways, and I think everybody knows that. Is there one right answer to fix it? No, absolutely not. I think some people, some lawyers, some people in the system have forgot that this isn't about the adults. This is about the children. And, you know, these kids aren't developed. They don't know. They don't have the experience.
They don't have the skills.
They don't have the skills.
And they're learning. And they want to love both their parents.
But
And
when you throw mud, hoping it's going to stick, whether it's an allegation or whether it's not sending the documents until 12:01 in the morning, or, you know, the day before you're supposed to be in court,
Friday after
or getting
evening.
served 24 hours before you're going on a 3-week trial for a contempt of court. I don't think people
which never went
realize.
anywhere, by the way.
I don't think people realize the effect that it has long term on the kids, because you're human, and being served contempt of court or being served papers, it has an effect on you as a human. You're being challenged as a person again. And it's not like I got served once or twice or 3 times. It was constant serving.
And she never paid child support after you got the kids, right?
No, I
tried.
I tried very hard for 3 years. I got the kids in 10. The official court document is a 13 dated document. So in the summer of 13, I said, Elena, like, I need child support. You're not paying anything at all.
Then you weren't making you were
No,
making a great income because the trial was affecting your work, and because it was hard for you, notwithstanding you're up at 4 a.m.
yeah,
And in fairness to you, when the children went into your care, even though your wife stepped up and was instrumental in their upbringing, you were the one that woke up early in the morning. You got them all ready for school. You packed their lunches. You organized your time at work so that you were home for 3 o'clock in the afternoon so that you could care for them. You took them to their extracurricular activities. Although your wife, like, obviously helped. Please don't get me
she
wrong.
did the morning shift. She got the kids off to school. You know, I did more of the work at night with the running around. My wife continued to work afternoons in Toronto to be able to do that with the kids, because I always had early right. So, you know, at the end of the day, we made a good team. You know, like, she was very instrumental in, you know, taking Matthew to the library when he was younger and reading to him and help, because he couldn't read when we got him, and he couldn't write. Like, there was all kinds of things that
She
were.
actually kept them out of school, and that's why Justice McGee ordered they go into your care, because instead of you being able to see them and pick them up from school, isn't that what happened? She
Matthew was an angry child right from day one.
Right.
And
Well, maybe not in the first month,
No,
but okay.
but you know, at the end of the day, he had his struggles, and Matthew had the outburst, which, you know, a little easier for me to read. Like, he's angry. Okay, you know, I can see you're angry. What do you need? You need to eat. You need a hug. It was a little easier to go on. Elena struggled with basically managing it, and when he did come to our house, you know, the professionals, CAS, OCL, they took note of that. They said, you know, the discipline's a little more regimen, and it was more, you know, consistent. It wasn't, you know, there was no negotiating. It was, this is the way it is, and it worked well for Matthew. Matthew needed that firmness.
Structure.
He needed the structure. The structure is
too.
the word, is the perfect word, right? He needed that.
But I want to get back to Marissa because I understand she survived.
She did.
After 7 days, she got up.
Yep.
And it was hard for her to come to terms with it in the beginning as to whether or not she wanted to end her life. And I don't want to, you know, everything, like, to me, I kind of see everything has a time and a place, and what goes around comes around usually. And you don't push somebody off a cliff, but things, I hope to think in general, the truth eventually comes out. Sometimes too late, but the truth does eventually come out. But I understand that the person that found I understand the person that found Marissa is someone that you talk to now. He was walking by,
yeah,
and he saw her hanging from the tree, and he and his wife brought her down. And you wanted to reach out to that person.
I did.
And you did? And what did you learn from that person?
He lost his daughter when she was 25 in 2010, just before I got the kids.
And she had ended her life.
From what I understand, yes.
Right. And so, in some ways, he was meant to find her.
I think
I
so.
guess.
I'm not a, you know, big believer in God,
Right.
but I it's too much of a coincidence. I just, you know.
You have a tattoo on your arm.
Yep.
What is it?
It says perseverance.
Why is it there?
I got it right after the trial, after we did the appeal, because, you know, we were in court for so long, and I stuck with it. It was hard. I got through it, and Marissa actually drew that. She drew it. The tattoo artist copied it, and he put it on. But Marissa drew that.
Does Marissa know now about the teddy bear?
Yes.
Okay, so let's talk a bit about that for a minute. So finally, finally Marissa learns why she has that teddy bear.
Mhm.
When did that happen?
After she got out of the hospital, she had a conversation. I'm not 100% sure who she found out through, but she did talk to my wife about it, and my wife kind of confirmed what was.
And how did she react to you?
Her and I have never had the conversation directly.
Why not?
I think she's still trying to look after people. I think she knows that this is a very sensitive subject for me, for obvious reasons.
Right, you don't feel, so in other words, you never felt that it was important that you run to her and tell her about this?
No.
Why not?
I didn't see that it'd bring any good.
Well, except that it would provide some closure and or explanation as to why you weren't spending as much time as you could have.
You know.
Didn't you owe it to yourself?
Well, it's not about me though, Marcy. It's about the kids.
Exactly.
So when you make decisions as a parent, most times they're pretty good. There's times, I would think.
Not for me. Go ahead.
I think sometimes you make the best decision at the time, and maybe you don't have all the information, or you don't have that little crystal ball that says, hey, in 6 years, 7 years, this is going to come to a crashing halt. I will say one thing. The worker from York Region, she called it. She called it in 2009. She said to me, she says, Shawn, Matthew, he's verbalizing his anger right now. He's going to have some challenges. He will. He will probably get in trouble. He will, and she gives me this scenario, and I'm like, you're calling my kid bad. And I thought, I don't know if I like you anymore. But I listened. She says, but I'm going to tell you what I'm most worried about. I'm worried about Marissa. Marissa doesn't vocalize. Marissa keeps it in. She's got a smile. She's got an infectious smile. How are you going to know how she's feeling?
So what did you do? Did you ever put them in counseling?
We had a lot of court-ordered counseling. A was much more insistent that they were counseled for their entire life. It got to a point where it was so obvious that they knew what the counselors were going to ask before they asked it. They had the answers. And, I've confirmed that with my son. He's like, Dad, I knew what they're going to ask. This is what they want to hear. He didn't want to answer the question. He was done. They were out counseled. And that was one of the contentious points in the trial. They should be in counseling. And the OCL agreed with our position, saying that,
They need a break.
They need to go play hockey. They need to go run around and ride bikes. They need to fall down and scrape their elbows. They need to be with their friends. They don't need this adult conflict. They don't need appointment after appointment after appointment after appointment. And to that point, when Marissa had her issues, her medical issues, A was consistently trying to have them addressed by a medical professional. She would sneak them off on her own time on her weekends, even though she wasn't supposed to.
She wouldn't report it to you, and
She
then
wouldn't
you'd
report
find
it.
out.
So we were.
And then you'd be blamed because it's your fault in the first place.
When we sat, I'll tell you how all Marissa's problems went away with her medical issue. We were sitting in the gastro office, and I was at the appointment with A, and we all went in, and the gastro was asking questions to Marissa. A was answering the questions, and I spoke up and I said, maybe it's better if we let Marissa answer the questions. And of course there was some back and forth
because she knows better.
I said to the doctor, I said, listen, can we try something? And I said, it's up to you. I said, why don't A and I leave the room and you ask Marissa exactly what you're asking right now?
And that happened.
And we went out in the room, and A was very upset with me. She says, I don't know, I'm not a doctor, I don't understand, I don't look after their needs, blah, 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 blah.
But she's not a doctor.
She's not a doctor either.
But because she was a massage therapist, she thought she had more insight and education.
In some aspects she did.
Yes.
She had training on the human body. So in some aspects, I agree with that. But I wouldn't agree that she was the better choice to look after the needs of the children. Difference of opinion. So when the doctor came back out and got us, she pulled us back in and she says, this is what we're going to do. Marissa has agreed to sit down after each meal and try and use the washroom. She is going to eat this, and she's going to try different things. We're going to do this for 60 days. Marissa has agreed to do it for 60 days. If there is an issue in 60 days, y'all come back and we'll talk about it again. We've never been back. Marissa had the control to say, no, this is what's happening with me, rather than her mom speaking for her. And she's never had an issue again. Our family doctor called it years ago. He said it's behavioral. This is her acting out.
Because of the trauma in the home.
And, like when you see that there's a medical issue, sometimes it's hard to equate that it's just a behavioral issue. And I struggled with it, talking to my wife, and she says, listen, this is the doctor that delivered me. He's not new. His office is on Main Street on the Danforth. It's been there forever. Like, this is an older gentleman, great doctor. Everybody knows him in Toronto. And he was bang on the money.
Your go-to, though, is to presume that professionals know what they're doing. And that's what I've heard throughout this, our conversation. And yet A's position is that she knows more and the professionals aren't presumed to know what they're doing. Is that sort of fair? So
Yeah.
this is where you two were working because you'd be happy with, I mean, obviously you didn't go to a quack doctor, but
Yeah.
you didn't go to a quack doctor, but you know, you trusted this doctor, you knew that there was a good relationship between Marissa and the doctor, and you thought, I mean, I'm gonna take those recommendations, whereas not, you know, went out of her way to suggest that it really had to do with you.
And to this day, that's still true.
Yeah, and that the sexual assault, which she still believed, even at the trial occurred, okay, which was, I think, part of the flaw in her reasoning, and how to proceed, is I think that was really painful too. You and I have spoken over the years at least a few times a year, right?
I would say probably every other month we
Mostly
connect.
me calling.
Mostly you
Yeah,
calling
you
me.
don't call. But we talk about, and sometimes I look to you for advice, you know, under the solicitor, you know, as an agent, or I don't divulge cases,
Yeah.
but, you know, I talk to you because, like, honestly, you were, other than the whining that happens sometimes, which, when I would talk to you, and I mean, I like to think that at the end of the day, I try to be a mensch every day. I try to look to try to do sort of the take the high road. You know, I have my flaws, lots, but I always look to you as the sound, sane, logical, empathetic client, and I think good friend. And one of the prime examples is when you said to me, look, I tell people, and you do coach. I mean, you don't get paid for it, which is the next issue that you need to start getting paid. But, you know, a lot of people have heard your story and they come to you for advice. And what you often say to them is go high. So if your ex wants 100, give her 200.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's, you know, you're a really good person and you're a really good dad and a very doting husband. And, you know, maybe you coddled your kids a bit because you were concerned
Of the
about
situation.
of the
Yeah.
situation.
Yeah.
And, you know, maybe you weren't as much of a disciplinarian as you should have been, but you sure gave them so much love and understanding and time. And so, you know, yes, the court system is broken, but there cannot be a perfect court system.
No.
Because if the government puts $1 million into the court system, litigants are going to try to suck out 1.5. I mean, it's a bad analogy.
The government can't put compassion and empathy into certain lawyers' hands to use for the better of the kids. That's to me, like, if more lawyers could do what you do and say, hey,
Well, I'm not perfect though. I mean,
no, listen, none of us are, but you know, when I came to you on a recommendation of a friend, she warned me. She says, you know, Marcy can be aggressive. Marcy, you're gonna have to really have some thick skin because there's days you may not understand how she's approaching it, but you gotta follow it. And I remember that first 6 months, it was very difficult trying to understand you and figure you out. And
why?
I just felt because you kept gathering information, but I really didn't understand why you're gathering information. But then when we were in trial, I remember thinking, I told her that on our very first day that I brought the retainer in. It was such a small detail, but you know, 5-6 years later, you're bringing it up and you're talking about like we just had the conversation. You just renewed your notes. That's the kind of stuff that I liked about you because those small details sometimes had
Well, they
a lot
make all
more.
the difference.
They had a lot more bearing, and you know, like even right now, you know, the fact that you still call about how are my kids, how is my wife, how am I, you know, you don't need to do that. There's
Well, you're not paying me to do that, so you're right.
But-
Haven't paying me for this.
But at the end of the day, though, Marcy, I would hope that I don't want this to sound wrong and not to try and tackle any profession, but lawyers make good money.
They
That's
absolutely do.
that's not a secret.
No,
You know, even if
they make a good living, and they
if they could put more compassion into it and you know in some points stop the who can hide what from who and all the other little things that get played because from an outsider it looks like a game because they open the door into the library and there's the two lawyers that were just throwing stuff at each other saying, hey, what time's tee off time on Saturday morning? People see that, and when you're emotional, it's not hard to rev somebody up to get them to spend a couple $1,000s very quickly, and then now you have another stress. You have a stress of money. You have a stress of
So I'm going to tell you what bothers me about the system. You can tell me, to me. And again, everybody's different. I just want to resolve the problem. I am goal oriented. So you come to me, you ask for 10 things. I'll be honest with you and say maybe you'll get 8. Most likely 7. I mean, I'm being simplistic.
Yeah.
But, the more you're going to demand, the more money you're going to have to spend, and that's money for your children. And, you got to check yourself and be more realistic. If somebody comes to you and says to me, this is what I want and this is what I want you to do, I'm going to be honest and say, it's going to be problematic. But, if that's what you want to do, I still think that you should sort of take some time and think about it. But to me, I'd like every file to be answered with a phone call. The two lawyers go, okay, here's your side, here's my side. We got to find somewhere in the middle. It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen in litigation. And you know what? It even doesn't happen with separation agreements these days.
But why can't there be an agreed, like you have an agreed statement of facts? Why can't you have an agreed starting point of a separation? Meaning, okay, 50-50. How do we make a 50-50 work?
But that's not the law. The law is not 50-50. The law is maximum contact, and there's no presumption of 50-50. But I do understand, why can't there be a generous sharing?
Genuine starting point. A genuine starting point that you can work from.
Because kids need both parents.
Absolutely. And I've always said that, and to this day I still say to my kids, I wanted nothing more than you guys to have a relationship with your mom. And in fact, the day that they were taking the kids from my ex-wife's care, my first phone call was to my wife. My second phone call was to the worker in York Region that was heading up the removal of the children, and I said, what support services can CAS offer, to help her through this, because I think this is going to be hard for her. This is going to be.
Well, were you doing it to be selfish because you wanted things to sort of die down? Is that why you did that?
No, because I think they still need their mom, and if their mom is off the rails, or the one parent is off the rails, doesn't have to be necessarily the mom, but in my case it was. If they're off the rails, they're not going to be able to be a good parent. You got too much emotional wrap up in it, and you're not going to make good decisions. I mean, how do you make a good decision when you're angry? You can't. Look, road rage. How do you make a good decision to pull over and calm down? You don't. You're mad. You're yelling. You're screaming. You're honking your horn. How do you make a good decision when you're always emotionally stressed, financially stressed, and angry? You can't be a good parent. And there's so many parents, like friends of mine, that have separated, and they're like, "How did you get through it?" I'm like, "Listen, everybody gets mad at each other. There's always different parenting things. Try and keep the kids in sight. If they want to go to their mom for Thanksgiving, give them a bit of leeway. Give them a little bit of control and try and be nice." Most times I think most people are mature enough, it's going to come back and align, and it may take a bit of time. The problem is when the time, in my case, was over 4,000 days. That's 13 years in court. You figure the amount of nights worrying, the amount of nights not seeing your kids, the amount of time you're not sure if the cops are coming. All these things they take away from being a good parent. And in some cases, the money that you spend on a lawyer, you could have had a really good time with your child. You could have put them in extra sports. You could have taken them on extra vacations. You
didn't really even have the money when we did the trial.
No.
You and I worked out a very reasonable fee.
I was broke, Marcy. I was broke.
Well, don't tell people that you didn't pay me anything, but right. But it was a tough one because your case was an exceptional case, and every time I would speak to you, You just were, were wholer and wholer, like holier and holier, and like your answers were you were a mensch. Um, you were still having some struggles with her, and
Yeah.
you weren't perfect. But even during the trial, 13 days going to Oshawa court, and she represented herself, and her mother came. And so now you've got her and her mother against you, and the whole part about the sexual assault again comes up, and the fact that she's better, that you didn't deal with Marissa's medical issues quick enough, that she's a much better parent than you. She subpoenaed your wife.
So,
Remember that?
and there's another thing about a trial. You look at the hands that outreach on a trial. So now our family doctor was there. That was hard for her.
She summoned the family doctor. That was.
And the other thing is that.
And her psychologist that testified against her.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
But when it comes to my wife, here's my ex-wife questioning my now wife's ability to be a parent, and now my wife's bitter. She really resents me in some ways.
I remember
of
that.
having her on the stand for this woman to pick holes at her for 8 hours. 8 hours.
That was a very difficult time, and putting your wife in that position was horrible because.
If I could change one thing about the trial, I wouldn't have my wife on the stand. And it's not because she didn't bring lots of value to the trial. I didn't have that crystal ball. Just like I didn't have the crystal ball at the beginning of the separation. What should I do?
Well, so we're in a trial where the children have been with you since 2010.
Mm-hmm.
It is exceptionally unlikely. It is.
Status quo was set.
Right. And again, we don't do, but there was no evidence to suggest that the children should go back to reside with her.
No.
You had an exceptionally strong case, okay? And now we're going to trial knowing that you have an exceptionally strong case. However, once you go to trial, Justice Nelson himself, he had a poker face for the majority of the trial, and very hard to read, although great judge.
Mm-hmm.
And here we are now worried because it's never 100%.
No.
And sometimes when you're that confident, maybe you're missing something. And so here we are at the trial, 13 days. She's got boxes and boxes that she's coming with. She is continuously acting as the poor litigant that wants all the rules to only apply to you. And we're walking around for those days and we're scared because, these children need to live with you.
There's the emotional aspect.
Yeah.
You don't know how the judge is thinking. He may have a totally different position. You got the financial constraints. You're not at work. Now you're stressed out at home and all this.
And the children are at home and you have to go back home and the children know about it because she's serving us with video, with audio tape conversations. And then this is what else happens. In some cases more than not, the lawyers will grab a certain fact and massage it and run with it as long as they can, or they'll take a small little fact and blow it out of proportion, like when you got drunk before the trial. So you had a night that you were drinking
Well, so what happened was it was the Friday before the trial. Trial was to start on the 15th, was Monday. The Friday night.
And you're not an alcoholic.
No, no.
But you do like your beer.
Sometimes. Our friends invited us over just to kind of, hey, have a night out, chill out. And basically I was ready to go and I hear a knock on the door and a server comes to my door and he actually said to me, he says, dude, most days I like my job. Today, I hate it. And he says, I'm so sorry. Good luck. That's all he said to me. Nice guy.
I remember, we spoke to him.
And he served me with contempt of court.
What was the contempt again? I don't
Not
remember.
providing financials, but I provided my financials probably 3 or 4 times.
And she hadn't.
And she had, I don't know if she's maybe trying to serve herself, I don't know. Anyway, but,
And then it came out about the story and how you were drunk in
Yep.
front of the kids, and then she drilled the kids.
And listen,
And then she
I
gave
I
us
own
a
that.
copy of the audio tape. Right?
I
Yeah, you own that. But that became
that was 3 hours in the trial about my drinking. One night.
one night.
One night. So, you know, at the end of the day, this is what happens. And what did she have to lose? She self-represented. What did I have to lose? My house. Like,
Not just your, I mean,
you know,
the children, like,
if there was a
children
lawyer,
primarily.
if there was a lawyer that's licking his lips and going, "Oh, this is going to be a cash grab,"
Yeah.
that could have been a $250,000 trial for me, like between prep and photocopies and everything.
I can charge you that.
No, I know.
But at any rate, she
Be-
spent $600,000 with 13
Yeah.
lawyers.
Yeah.
And then, after Justice Nelson served his, after Justice Nelson provided his ruling where you had sole custody, sole
26
decision,
pages. Remember?
26 pages, she then appealed it and hired a lawyer to do the appeal.
Yeah.
And then we had to go to the Court of Appeal. And I remember that day because I didn't know, I didn't have anything to say because
Nelson
his
said
ruling
everything.
was perfect.
I think he did a really good job in writing it, and it
Oh,
does
you're
give
perfect. We can't be perfect.
a lot of historical
and the Court
data
of
there.
Appeal didn't even call on me. Like, it was,
No.
and then when they, you know, here's what also bothers me, amongst many things. You know, litigants are people. And you are right. I mean, I'm not a patient person, okay? When I practiced criminal law for 20 years, my clients didn't want a hug.
No.
They wanted results, okay? And they wanted me, you know, to be, you know, to fight for them.
Right.
You know, I suppose I'm a bit ADD, undiagnosed, or, you know, obsessive compulsive, but you know, when I decided I was going to be a criminal lawyer because of Perry Mason, which most people don't even know anymore, that's literally what I wanted to do. And, you know, I went through law school, I took every criminal course almost, I summered at a criminal firm, and I wanted to be that criminal lawyer, but I wanted to be it because I wanted to be the advocate for these people that weren't strong enough. The bullies. I don't like bullies. I've never liked bullies. I don't like controlling people, okay? Of course I have to control my cases, right? Because my clients want this outcome. And it's got to be done ethically and honestly, because then it's not a fair, well, first of all, because that's what's right.
Yeah.
Okay? Because I am going to affect other people's lives. And I'm not sure how much effect I had in criminal. I'd like to think I had some. But again, depending on the day, depending on who the judge was,
Yeah.
depending on who the crown was, there was, you know, took away the control. But all I wanted to do was to make sure that they were treated fairly and got a fair trial. And I never judge them because it's not my role. So since it's not my role to judge, my role is to make sure that I represent them fiercely and ethically. And then I go to family law because I didn't feel like I was making much of a difference anymore. And I need to make a difference because I'm a workaholic, I have a purpose, and to me, as my parents instilled in me, no matter if you're a ditch digger or anyone else, A, you have to love going to work in the morning,
Yeah.
and B, you got to do your best.
Yeah.
And in spite of the fact that I went through a very high conflict separation, I chose never to go to court. What my ex-husband did say at our wedding was, I put 110% effort, 110% of the time. When I transitioned to family law, it was tough at the beginning because, you know, notwithstanding, and I'm evidence-based in my preparation, because it's evidence.
Yeah. Can't go on hearsay.
No, and don't make, if you don't have, there are many lawyers that will bluff and include outrageous and salacious allegations without any evidence to
But
back
we're not
it.
playing poker. We've got kids' lives
Right.
that are going to depend on these outcomes. And you know, when I started off the process, I can safely say I didn't think much of the court system. I didn't think much of the judges. I didn't think they knew what they were doing, and it's wrong. As I look back, and we speak about it over several times, everybody had a massive role to play, from Judge Wildman, like all the judges. I look back and go, they were a lot smarter than I realized. It's not that they didn't make good decisions, it's the time in between that they got to make those good decisions
Right.
that ruined my kids. It's not the judges. It was that time. There was so
But
long.
people,
And you
people
take a new
think-
lawyer
People
and
think judges are bribed. Like, could you
No.
imagine? I've had people say to me that they think that their previous lawyer was in cahoots with the other lawyer. First of all, it's against the whole nature of advocacy. But let me say this. Could you imagine being a judge and reading all these briefs every single day? It's got to be traumatic.
Yeah.
They don't want to be in the position to decide a family's fate. They don't want to be put in this uncomfortable position. But if pushed, they will be.
Judge Nelson
And they do the best they can.
reserved his decision until beginning of February. We were done the first week of December, so we waited 60 some days for the judgment, and I was really nervous.
So, yep, we're
And-
both.
But he did such a good job, and it was so clear that we even discussed it when we saw it. There's no way this could be appealed. Like this is as clear as it's going to get.
And
You
he
look
was
at all the other
generous to
orders.
her, too. He was
He
generous
was
in what he said.
he was very fair with her.
Very
I think.
fair.
And in some points, I thought she got more than she deserved. But
Right,
that's my opinion.
You
It's
didn't
more
get
so-
everything, but
No.
but we respected it.
Yes, correct.
And look, this is the system. And judges are appointed for good reason. I don't care what people say, if you got connections. When you get up on that bench, you're committed.
Yeah.
And you're committed to being objective. And so when I started family and started seeing all the false allegations being made, the horrendous
But
affidavits.
you see the pattern.
I see it now.
And I said to you at the very beginning when I met you, I said, it's like they got a playbook. This is what they're going to do first, and if that doesn't work, we're going to throw this at them. If this doesn't work, we're going to do
And
this.
those words, the debilitating words that they were taught to purposely put in correspondence to demean and degrade and disarm the other litigant as a bully tactic,
And
so they
people
will
give
back
up.
off.
People give up.
I don't blame them.
People give up. I was very close to giving up, and I can tell you.
But I needed the money, so I said, let's just do it.
But at the end of the day, there is a systematic pattern. You can see the things that get said, or you get accused of, or get hidden, or it's like a playbook. And it's awful
Or the
because
double docketing, or having the assistant send you a copy of the endorsement that you already have.
it's just
Or, you know what?
it's a lot of waste of money.
It's a complete waste of money. And, Justice Pugsley barked at me, rightfully so, when I said to him a few months ago, I had a client who wanted to have his day in court, so to speak, and the evidence wasn't as favorable for him. And I'm getting, and I'm sort of getting yelled at respectfully, like, does he really want a trial? And I said to him, like, I'm his advocate. He said, no, you're more than his advocate. And he was right, because I am an officer of the court, and it is our job as lawyers to tone down the conflict and try to see that we could resolve it.
But there's a lot of
The dog and pony show.
businesses in
It's
this
not a
system.
business.
It is when
It
you're
shouldn't be.
when you're going about it the way you are. Like, so 4,524 days from start to finish to the end of the appeal was the time we were through court. I have 24 banker boxes. 24 banker boxes of stuff. 24. That is.
And most of it nonsense.
I bet you 65% has no bearing. It's a, hey, see you tomorrow letter.
Except for the marks in school, which was key, right?
It's a shame that it comes to this. It becomes who's got more money and the uglier lawyer that can throw more mud. It shouldn't be like that. I would like to see either.
Some of these lawyers get off on it, actually. Some of these lawyers
Maybe so.
enjoy. No, I'm telling you, they enjoy the conflict. They look forward to the conflict, and I guess the problem with family law is, there's many issues in family law that need to be addressed, And I really hope that this interview will help people to understand that you really got to think carefully about what you're going to do in separation. And I mean, yours is an extreme case,
It is, and there's very
but it happens still. Parental
Yeah.
alienation continues to happen. The manipulation using the children still happens now.
the CAS explained it to me this way: emotional abuse, the alienation. It's not like a punch in the face where you have a black eye. You punch somebody in the eye and they got a black eye. It's
It'll
pretty
heal.
obvious. It's pretty obvious that you hit them.
Right.
When you have this emotional abuse stuff, it's hard to prove. Like there's a lot of moving parts and it's a lot of hearsay and a lot of, back and forth. It takes a long time, but the problem is sometimes you're better off with the black eye because at least you know where you stand. With this stuff, and it's so loosey-goosey and it goes on for so long, it takes so long to investigate and to prove, all this time goes by, people get angrier, more bitter, the children get more thrown into the middle, there's more turmoil, there's more fighting, and it just keeps going and going and going, and this snowball grows so fast.
But who's better off? And so this is where I come back to. Who's better off in explaining to potential litigants what they're up against? You. The lawyers, don't have the same experience that you have.
No.
And so maybe there needs to be more of the litigants speaking out and telling people what they're really going to be looking at and see if there's alternate ways to deal with it. Because again, we couldn't stop A
No.
from having her day, and we couldn't stop A. It was the A show really during the trial.
But
and look what happened, and then Marissa.
Judge Nelson correctly said the trial had to happen.
He did
He
his
needed,
judgment. Yeah.
it was an end to be the end. It had to happen. Like he saw it. Like it was over the whole course with just the facts, like you say, the real facts. It became very obvious that this was a witch hunt, for the lack of a better word, and it needed to be stopped. But then, 2016 was too late. It was too late. These kids,
The damage had been done.
they'd already been done. They've already been,
The manipulation.
and
And the
They're coming
attacking
into-
of the letters from the lawyers.
It-
I mean, the constant attacking at you.
and listen, like even I was self-represented for a while. My previous lawyer had a heart attack, and he said to me like, whatever you need, the guys in the office will help you out. You can do this. You can fill out the forms. You can keep the process moving. He was great, and they would check it over, and if I needed help. But then when I tried to do the financial stuff on my own, I got zero respect from the lawyer at the time, to the point where I had to threaten to go to the Law Society because she wouldn't respond to me. And why do I not deserve the respect? I'm giving you
You
financials.
do.
It's simply numbers.
Just because you're self-represented, you deserve the same respect.
I in this particular case, I got zero respect. And that's when I spoke to my friend, and she says, there's really only one person that's going to be able to get this in order. And she warned me. She just said it's going to be a bit of a process, but just put your seatbelt on and get on for the ride, because it's going to be crazy. And Marcy, I'm glad I hired you. I'm glad that we met.
I'm glad I met you.
For a lot of reasons. And I often think about how all this has turned out, and there's some awful things that have happened. But I was thinking not too long ago, what if I didn't hire you? What if this was still going on? What if I was still trying to be self-represented? What if I had a lawyer that didn't have the empathy and compassion that you do? And it took a while for you and I to really understand each other, our
It's
positions.
a partnership. People don't understand.
And
It's
it
a
did take a
partnership.
while. It did. And
I took on, my role is to take on your stress. My role is to take on your case, because you're paying me.
Mhm.
And now I'm going to take it over, and I have to be completely engrossed in it so that I completely understand and speak for you.
Mhm.
Now, again, I've got to make sure to stay objective. But it's a partnership, because you're going through a battle, unfortunately,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, if you look at all our notes leading up to the trial, I tried to go through a lot of them and just highlight the one sentence that really had any meaning. Out of 3 pages of document, we'd have banker boxes of pages that had no highlight marks on it.
Right.
They had no bearing on anything. They were just fluff.
They weren't necessary.
They were just a waste of money, and you still have to respond to them. Now it's like, who's got more money? Who's going to be out litigate? You know, who's going to out litigate the other guy? And
What about the children having their own advocate or their own lawyer right after separation? So that, I mean, our system doesn't allow for it. But wouldn't that sort of put...
Without attacking the OCL, because the statement may sound like I'm attacking the OCL. The OCL's position was status quo. They're with mom, they should stay with mom. And that position hung and stuck for probably 2 years. 2 years. And when the CS had...
Yeah, and
when
then you
they
regret
won,
that you had to leave. Then you regret leaving.
Right.
So that's why people now want to stay in the house when it's going to cause problems for the children, because that's part of the game. Yep.
When the CAS was successful in court to have the kids removed, you know, the OCL was kind of... I think he was caught off guard, and I think he missed a few things. Now, there's processes in it. They have their tools. I don't disagree with their tools, and I know it's hard to get a picture. You have only so many hours to give to the case. That's part of it. I get there's limitations. It shouldn't always be up to the OCL or up to a lawyer to make things right. The onus has to come back on the two parents to start doing things right and working with each other to some capacity. I get splitting money and houses and assets, maybe a little contentious. I get it. I get, you know, there's emotion content to the kids. It makes sense. But really, you made those kids together. You got to parent those kids together. What's fair? You know, like growing up, you're in the sandbox. Okay, you play with the toy for 5 minutes, then he plays for the toy for 5 minutes. Or you give him the dump truck and he takes the grader for a while. That's how you're taught growing up. What happens when we become adults?
So what happened?
What happened?
The anger and
now
the
it's like, no, you're the other parent? No way.
What if, because there's the MIP program where you have to go to an information session if you're going to litigate, if you're going to have an application issued, both parties. What if there was a mandatory term that the two parties had to go to mediation for an hour regarding the children prior to the next step? Would that help?
I think if you do that without legal representation, I think it should be without legal representation.
And why is that?
Because then you don't have a bird in your ear chirping. No way, that's not going to be our position.
Okay, but what if but hold on, because there's an imbalance at times, there's a power imbalance, and what if one of the litigants isn't as strong as the other? Then they're going to be bowled over, even though it is mediation.
But mediation should be non-biased. It should be basically serve as an information service to say, hey, you know, like, these are the things that are generally accepted, whether it's 50-50 time, you know, every other holiday, our natural schedule. I think people have been getting divorced long enough that somebody should be able to put a bit of a package together to say, you know, we should really be starting at this. You guys really need to realize if the lawyers get involved, it's going to get much harder for you and the children.
We have our own samskar, as we'll call it. We have our own, you know, I represented someone who said that the lawyer had convinced him to just allow reunification nonstop, even after it had been done, because that lawyer had been alienated when he was younger. So, you know, so our own perceptions and opinions are also based on our own experiences, and as lawyers, we got to check that.
The problem once the
problem
first
with
person,
lawyers is lawyers.
the first whoever is the applicant, in my opinion, and this is only my opinion, really starts the shit show, for a lack of a better word. You know, the respondent has to play catch up from there on into the very end.
They're defending themselves.
You're always the respondent, and I think that's part of the issue. If you could have mandatory counseling, couples counseling only to show you what's going to happen and give you some tools, maybe it'll take a little load off the court. Maybe people that really do have some serious issues to, you know, argue, which I don't disagree. You know, there's always those underlying situations where one parent should not have 50-50. I agree with that. But I think there needs to be a better starting point. I don't think just calling a lawyer and starting the ball rolling is the best first step. Like, I think the court should say, well, have you
Except
guys?
if there's imbalance, and if there's domestic.
But who decides
domestic,
who just?
No, but if
okay.
there's domestic issues, then, I mean, and I understand, because we have to be understanding of that, and there's many different cultures. But I think the problem is that it's very hard for people to trust, rightfully so.
Mhm.
And I don't know, like, I'm a stranger, and I don't know how someone, can trust me. But I need them to trust me, because we need to work together. I think is a really hard time for people in trusting. And so to me, someone like you giving a lecture, an informational video, someone who has really been, the only thing that you didn't go through was being charged. And I don't know which is worse, the allegations that you could never litigate, right? Sometimes one would think that being charged and being acquitted, although even if you're acquitted, the other side will say, well, it's a different burden, right? But, I think that you've been through the entire gambit, that it's you're better to explain to people than we as lawyers. We are the lawyers. We are making money from clients, rightfully so, but we're not fully objective in that sense, because unfortunately to many it is a business. But I will never know how it felt. I can.
My wife doesn't know how it felt.
Right. I mean, I still have the picture of Marissa, and I never saw it. And I still remember when you were being chased around the car by A with the audio. And I still remember where we were at the courthouse listening to that audio of Matt, and the other audios where she'd be feeding them, and there'd be problems feeding.
Every question was leading.
And every question was leading, and questions about you, and we had it, the manipulation, and we're sitting there, and we're nauseous, literally nauseous.
It's hard to fathom sometimes. Like, it's how
the children were dealt with in that way.
How do you marry somebody that becomes so evil? Like, how do you? Anger is an awful thing. Emotion's an awful thing. And
love and hate.
There's so much emotion after a separation. Should there be a cool down period? Yeah, but how do you create a cool down period, because you still got those kids that got to be looked after, right? I think you're right in a way. If there was like, I had to do a dad's program, for instance. One of the things that was requested of me is that...
And you did everything that you were asked.
Elena was asked to do a parenting program. They sent me to dads. And dads, ironically enough, in Ajax, asked me to come back and speak. Because I participated, I gave some insight, I gave some examples, and that was way early on into my whole fiasco. But, maybe a bunch of people that are hating each other, sitting in one room listening to how over 18 years your kid can go from a kid that's in diapers to what I experienced. Maybe if it opened up a couple eyes, I think it's a good cause.
But you are in the best position to explain to people that want to litigate more than the lawyers, because you actually experienced it, and you saw how things could go different. And I think.
And I know none of the facts. I know none of the case. I know none of it all. It's just, hey, this is my experience. This is what's happened to me. It can get off the rails pretty quick. Be careful what you are gonna say, or what you're gonna accuse that person of, or what. And you have to really think: is it worth sending 16 letters to say that mom kept the hockey jersey?
How about
It's really, there's no value added in that. That's
no. It's just a way to increase
tension,
conflict and tension,
and make it. They think it's making a difference. It's not making a difference. I can guarantee you.
It's a lot easier. Let me just say this. It's a lot easier to say to a client, I'll just do whatever you want. It's a no-brainer, because regardless of what happened, the lawyer can say afterwards, I have written instructions from you, so it's on you. That's the easy way out. But we as lawyers are, especially family lawyers, we're not supposed to be looking for the easy way out. We've been entrusted to help navigate so that your children have a better life. We are really acting for the children at the end of the day. And that's the problem. When you write to a lawyer and say this is not appropriate, and they downplay it or ignore it, okay, that's the problem. So look, I listen, I went through a separation. It was high conflict. I didn't spend the money on court. I just saw that it wasn't going to go well and it was going to affect our children. I was not perfect. I was very emotional, and it was very difficult. And so I try to use that because people want to be heard. They want to be valued. But at the end of the day, it's all about the goals. And so, for you are the best person to explain to people. And what happened to your daughter, who's an exceptional, beautiful girl that's going to come through this like nothing
Yep.
else, right? Is in spite of what you try to do every single day to just make it go smoother. And really what you do is try to be a better person every day.
Yeah.
And because of your morals and your ethics, you're able to help the other people. And I'm sorry that we had to talk about your daughter and your son. But 8 years ago, you would have never believed it had I said this is what's going to happen, right?
I didn't believe the CAS in 2010, 2009. I didn't believe some of the judges. I didn't believe a lot of things because it just, nothing seemed to move at any speed at all. And one would argue, okay, well, if you rush into it, you're going to make mistakes. Well, you make more mistakes by taking your time.
You make more mistakes by taking your time. Some people believe a day away from the child is too much. Okay, maybe a week. Okay, even if we stretch it to a week, that doesn't stop lawyers from counseling their clients to keep the children away and then demand supervised parenting time. Nothing could be more demeaning.
I'm going to tell you, I will give you what supervised access looks like for me. When I had it one time, A was 2 hours late for a 4-hour visit, my first one I would have had in a long time. I basically sat on the floor with provided toys, with one-way glass, and 5 people on the outside taking notes. And I will tell you, I felt like I was in a zoo behind bars. And I remember leaving there, calling my wife saying, babe, I don't know how I'm going to keep doing this. Like, everybody's just standing there. And you feel like every move you do is being scrutinized. Matthew needed a diaper change.
Did you do the diaper okay?
I did, but keep in mind, all those accusations came out before that visit. So you don't think in my head,
I'm going to showcase it. You're going to put it right there in the middle so everybody can see that you're not touching him inappropriately.
It's an awful thing. I was bitter. I'm telling you, I was
your
angry.
bitterness left to inside turmoil. You have kept it all inside. You have not lashed out. You have struggled because you've kept it inside. You have gone for counseling.
I've gone for counseling,
right.
and I'm back in counseling now. I'm not afraid to say it because nobody's been in. If you haven't been in my position, you'll never understand it. And just general life these days is getting harder and harder with everything that's going on in the economy and the world activities and
I'm sure with Marissa you've figured what did I do wrong? How could
you
I
question
stop
yourself
it?
every corner. You question yourself, and the other issue that plays on all this is that we have a court order for financial responsibility, and
she's not paying again, right?
It's been delinquent again, and one of the things that I tried to do, and once
she
again,
didn't pay her part for Marissa's university, even though there's an order for that.
The order was pretty clear.
One third.
And what we had decided on was not trying to spend all kinds of time and money on every document that showed that maybe she should pay 50 cents more a month.
Right.
We gave her a rock bottom number based on her number. We didn't challenge it, but I said, okay, in a university, you've now got 5 years to prepare for 1/3 of university, which is approximately $30K. The problem now is I'm financing university for Marissa's portion, my portion, and her portion. And now
So why aren't you going back to court?
we're in a year and a half, because Fro's looking after it.
Right.
So now we're a year and a bit. I'm trying to get last year's money back. She's already in arrears for her regular. Now I have to do all these documentations, but nowhere in that quarter it says, hey, Shawn, you got to finance the university and then fight to get your money back. Like, I don't understand why Fro's not saying, Miss Hall, like, you need to pay your portion directly to the university. That's what the court order says. They're just happy with me doing all the work, and they're just sending one notice to say, this is what you owe. Like, why do we, I understand why Fro's there. It's a good program, but how it's being worked is poor.
You
They
also
need to make
think it
changes.
has, there's a perception, you think, that men are treated differently with Fro.
From
It's a
the,
tough one to say.
I think, listen, I don't have all the facts.
Right,
These
these are your suspicions.
My suspicions, my opinion, talking to other guys that, are divorced and pay child support, I've heard some horror stories. Their employers are getting, are having to garnish their wages, they're losing their driver's license, their passports are gone, and I'm thinking, okay, so last September I had to start paying university. We're now into October. I haven't received a dime for last year's.
And
I've
they
already
went
paid
traveling
university
on
this
trips,
year.
right?
And she's been out of the country traveling and doing self-help and training for herself and vacationing. I mean, I got no problem you go on vacation.
Just pay
Pay
it.
your child support first. That's your priority. And it's literally another 5-6 years. And is it a lot of money? Yep, it is. I understand that. But when I was living in my truck, I don't think she really cared that I was living in my truck because
I don't think she cared about that at all. So to me, it makes sense for you to offer your services so that you can, even on Zoom, talk to these people, because I won't be able to say it as well as you will.
I bring a different perspective and a different language than you would. You have much more of the legal side of it. I have more of the compassion that maybe some lawyers don't have or can't have. I get it. I do. You guys have a tough job. It's not just one case you're looking after
But we
either.
get, no. But we get paid for it. So you know
That
what?
I agree with.
So cry me a river. It's our job. We chose it. So no sympathy there. I don't need the sympathy. But to me, I always learn a lot more from my clients than they may learn from me. And unfortunately, without meeting you, I wouldn't be the family lawyer that I am today, because your case is always in the back of my mind, and I always look to be as good as you or better, which
Right.
is going to be a tough one, because honestly, you're a rarity in terms of how you have dealt with this system, and you should really
It's not
be proud.
without flaw though, too, Marcy.
Well, you
I
have
mean,
flaws, obviously.
but I think
Kidding.
the system
You
was
juggled
hard.
your wife,
Yeah.
you juggled your ex-wife, you juggled these kids, you jumped into your wife's family's kids, they are your children.
They are, yep.
You work 50, 60 hours a week just to put food on the table. When we finished the trial, you were worried about whether or not you were going to lose your house, in spite of the fact that you were working so hard, and you rose above it, and your children are very fortunate to have you.
Thank you, Marcy.
Thanks for sharing. No, just kidding.